Welcome everyone to the March installment of the Symbiota support group. Today, we are going to be talking about data cleaning. And as always, we'll just start with sort of the presentation part, but then it is open to any other participants who might have questions relating to the topic or not relating to the topic. So we'll record any questions that are related to this specific topic, because they might be helpful for people who are looking at the recording, but then we'll stop recording and you can answer, we can answer any other random questions you might have. All right. Well, welcome. My name is Katie Pearson. I'm the data manager for the Symbiota Support Hub, and I have a lot of my team joining me here today. So we have Samantha and Nico and Lindsay and Ed, and they are all Symbiota Support Hub folks as well. So while it has my name here as the host, everyone from the Symbiota Support Hub here is helping host too. So super happy to see you all. Just a couple of reminders. There's a growing group of resources available to the community for tutorial help, docs, things like that. And now we also have a page on symbiota.org where you can look at the Symbiota support group recordings and what future topics we're going to be talking about in these sessions. And it looks like that. So you can register right there. You can send all your friends and colleagues to this page as well and have them involved in the Symbiota support group meetings too. Okay, so today's topic is data cleaning, and there are a number of really handy tools in Symbiota that can be used to clean data. And particularly, we're going to be talking about the geographic cleaning tool, the taxonomic cleaning tool, and how to do batch edits. And then I'm going to briefly talk about bringing in cleaned data, because that has been a couple of, I have gotten questions about that in the past. So first of all, I just wanted to point you to the data cleaning pages in the Symbiota docs. So if you just open the Symbiota docs, I'll just go right here. It's under the collection manager guide because you need administrator permissions. And you'll go down the side right here to data cleaning. And there will be a couple of other things that I'm not going to talk about today, but you can definitely read those at your own time. So geography cleaning tools, taxonomy cleaning tools, and managing duplicates, etc. You can find right there. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about data cleaning in a Symbiota portal, and I wanted to make the first kind of caveat that these tools are mostly useful for live managed collections, because if you are making large changes or a lot of changes in your collection and you manage your data live in some other instance, so an EMU or Specify or something like that, then you'll have to put those edits somehow into your home database. And if you ever update your data from your home database back into Symbiota, those edits may not be staying there. Like they might get overwritten. They will still be in the edits table and you can look at them later, but they will not be what's immediately visible. So keep that in mind. If you are a snapshot collection, then you might just kind of want to use these tools to guide you in changes that need to be made in your own database, but you don't want to start doing a bunch of clicking unless you know that you know how to get those data back into your home database. And also I wanted to make the point that anything that you can't batch fix using these tools, we might be able to help you with on the back end if the portal that you're working in is an Arizona State University hosted portal. Or you can contact your portal administrator if it's not an ASU hosted portal like MyCoPortal. They can probably do some batch queries on the end. So feel free to reach out to us if you're like, man, I just have all these commas in the wrong place. Can you help me move them? So just let us know before you start editing 2,000 records one by one. Okay, so let's talk about the geographic cleaning tool. The geographic cleaning tool is based on a list of geographic names that exist in the back end of a Symbiota portal, kind of like a geographic thesaurus. And we get questions often about like, what is the correct way to put things like Marshall Islands or Guam? And the truth is that we don't necessarily have the answer because the geographic thesaurus is made for data discoverability, not necessarily to be like a country authority. Those standards exist and we try to follow them, but it's also more useful if we can be able to visualize and help people search on multiple ways of entering the data. So because of this, you might find multiple ways of entering the same data. And one example is some people will put United States as the country and then Guam as the state province. Other people will put country as Guam, and you will find that there are in the drop-down lists for some portals, you might have both of those options possible. And so just decide, it's kind of like a community decision about where they're going to put what data, and there should be standards, but we are not necessarily like the standards makers. We try to help people move in kind of the approved or standards if they exist, but we don't necessarily make standards. Okay, so that being said, let's go ahead and open up the geographic cleaning tool. And you can find that today I'm going to be working in the Cal State LA Herbarium in the CCH2 portal. And so from your home, you should be logged in. And as I mentioned before, you need to be an administrator to use these data cleaning tools. You go to My Profile, Occurrence Management, and then the name of the collection for which you're going to run the tool. And then you should see the administration control panel. If you do not, then that means you don't have admin access to that collection. And then you can find these tools, both the ones that I'm going to be talking about today, in the data cleaning tools, kind of near the bottom here. And we are looking at the geographic cleaning tools right now. So that's right here in the middle. There are two options that you can look at right here. This is geographic distributions, and that will just give you a list of all the geographic or the political geographic areas that are in your data. So you can kind of look at numbers here. So that's the number of specimens that are in each of these countries. You could click on one of these and look at the number of states in each, if they exist. Then if we go to the geographic cleaning tool, that's what I'm going to be kind of diving into right now. So it's going to generate some statistics for you, and it will tell you whether there are any potential issues. So here, this says questionable countries. That means a country that does not match the geographic thesaurus or the backend geography. Looks like there are none of those, so we're good there. Then we have null countries and non-null state. That means it has a value in state province, but it doesn't have a value in country. So if I listed this record, if I knew which state or which country this state belonged to, then I could assign a country. You can also conveniently look at that specimen straight from here. And if I knew, or if I could read what this says, then I could add it there. I don't know off the top of my head where this is, but my guess is France or Austria or Switzerland. And then there's similarly questionable states and questionable counties. So if I click list states right here, then under each country, it'll tell me, hey, I don't recognize Ottawa as a state. I don't recognize Yukon Territory as a state. And I can select from these drop-down menus which ones I would want to apply. So for example, Yukon Territory, if that was the same as Yukon, I could click that, click replace state, and then this page would refresh and all of these, and those ones would be missing from this list because now they're no longer a questionable county. All right, and it's pretty straightforward from there. The ones that you'll probably find a lot of are things that are null county and non-null locality, and those probably require a little bit more georeferencing or digging into where those exactly are. But if you have some very easy ones, you can clean them up right there. And then to move back and forth between the tools, there's usually, you can just click back on this cleaning tools index. So you go to list records, then you could go either back to the main menu, which will give you back to this geographic report, or you could go all the way back to the cleaning tools index. All right, any questions about political geography cleaning?
I have a comment. This is Ed.
Great.
Okay. I just want to say that the geographic thesaurus is something we're developing further, and its main reason or reason why we have it there is to help people to get towards standards. So we do have a field that's called country code, and those codes are based on standards. And so this way, no matter what it says on your specimen as far as country or how, whether you want to do USA or United States or whatever, we could still use the thesaurus to properly fill in that code with the standard value. And that also happens, with states. Some people use abbreviations, or when people search, sometimes they'll say AZ for Arizona, and we want a return to come out. So we're developing that geographic thesaurus to assist in those certain cases. So we are getting there. There's more to come as far as the thesaurus goes.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. We have sometimes gotten questions, people saying, I have 5,000 Arizona records and they're not showing up when I search by Arizona. And we find that, oh, they were searching by Arizona verbatim, but in the data set, it says AZ. So, and so those are not exact, and so they didn't return as a search. But what Ed is talking about is that we are kind of revamping the system so that you would be able to search by AZ or Arizona or other synonyms of that specific political geographic unit. So stay tuned for more developments on that. It'll function a little bit more like the taxonomic thesaurus in the future, we hope. All right, let's talk about the taxonomic cleaning tool, which is a little bit more complicated, but also super, super helpful. So the taxonomic cleaning tool is mainly intended to be used to clean misspellings or orthographic variants, and it can be used to add taxa to the taxonomic thesaurus, and I'll talk a little bit about what that means. But I want to quickly mention kind of some important points about the taxonomic thesaurus itself. So that's the backbone of taxonomy within a portal. Similarly to the geographic thesaurus, it's not necessarily supposed to be a taxonomic authority or resource. We try to keep it up to date, and there are often communities who are working on the taxonomic thesauri in specific portals like the Bryophyte portal and the Lichen portal. They have specific kind of committees that are working on trying to keep these up to date. But the main purpose of the taxonomic thesaurus is to be to enable searches. So if you're searching by an old name, you should hopefully be able to get all the specimens that have been updated to the new name. And even if there are taxonomic discrepancies where like one person or one group accepts one taxonomic name and one group accepts a different taxonomic name, you should still be able to search across those different taxonomies because they will be linked as synonyms. And while there might be a taxon that is listed as accepted in a particular portal, that doesn't necessarily mean like we believe that is the gospel truth accepted taxon, and we abide by this specific taxonomic idea, because there's no like better taxon with regard to the taxonomic thesaurus. You have an accepted taxon and it's linked to all this synonyms, but it's just to enable searching and to enable people to use these curation tools. The taxonomic thesaurus is often not exhaustive as well, because it's kind of just updated as more data comes in, more specimens come in. And as these committees and people have time to enter new taxonomic resources or changes to taxonomy, they often don't have every single taxonomic name. Another caveat from the taxonomic thesaurus is that it doesn't really deal well with hybrids yet. That's a known issue. Hybrids and cultivars, they're a little bit more complicated, but we're working on being able to handle those a little bit better. And then another point about the taxonomic thesaurus, and remember, thesaurus means the back end taxonomy, not the cleaning tool, the thesaurus, is that the thesaurus does not change your taxonomic names. So if you put an unaccepted name when you're doing data entry, then just because there is a different accepted name in the taxonomic thesaurus, it doesn't mean that it's going to change your taxonomic name. And so we've gotten some questions about, can I use the backbone or some sort of tool that exists in my Symbiota portal to update my taxonomy? And we say, well, the taxonomic backbone is not the resource for all taxonomic changes and updates. So just so you know, this is for searching. It's not necessarily for being the best resource.
And could I add one more thing too? And
yeah, go for it.
And one of the problems is, if you're going to update, you pretty much want your database to match where you're filing your specimens. So batch updating your taxonomy of your collections might make it harder to find your specimens unless you rearrange your herbarium. And different collections have different methods. You guys hear me? Is that better? So, sorry, my mic was up. So different collections have different ways of managing their collections. And it's a lot of work to keep your collection, especially if you have a large collection, up to the latest taxonomy. So that's not always something that someone wants to do just out of the box.
Yeah, that's also a good point. It would be very, very hard to keep a lot of collections up to date. Okay, so with that information about the taxonomic thesaurus, I want to move into talking about the taxonomic cleaning tool. So the taxonomic cleaning tool, when you click a button that says remap to taxon, and I'll show you what that looks like presently, that does change the taxonomic name of your specimen. So if you had a specific taxonomic name and you say remap to a different taxon, it will change the name in that in the data entry form to the name that's in the taxonomic thesaurus. So just so you know, same thing with the family and the authorship of that taxon. Okay, so it's in the same place as the geography cleaning tool, just down here at the bottom where it says taxonomy. If you go, you can go to taxonomic distributions, which looks just like the geographic distributions. So it'll give you a list of, in this case, all the families and then all the genera underneath those families. So if you wanted to get a quick number of like, how many Cupressaceae do I have? You could go to this page, so that's useful. But then the taxonomic cleaning tool is under this Analyze Taxonomic Names button. So the taxonomic cleaning tool will do a number of steps. You set it up by, if you look here, you can see this is how many records that have taxonomic names that are not indexed to the central taxonomic thesaurus. And this is the number of scientific names belonging to those specimens that are not indexed to the central taxonomic thesaurus. So I have 78 names that are not in the taxonomic thesaurus. So what I can do is say, okay, I would like you to look at each of those names, try to find them in the taxonomic resource that I'm going to select. In this case, only the Catalog of Life is available to me. I want you to check only plants because there are genera that are shared across kingdoms and that can get a little bit funky. And then I'm going to tell it how many taxa I want it to check at one time. So if I just say 10, you can also say where you want it to start. So it's automatically going to start at A and then it's going to go down to Z. But if you wanted to start at N or M or whatever, then you could put that information here. So semi-manual will allow you to manually remap the taxonomic names as they come up. Fully automatic will be a little more aggressive in saying like, these are the same scientific names, so I'm going to link those all together. I think that's mostly like if there's authorship embedded in your scientific name, it's going to be a little bit more confident in saying like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that it's actually this scientific name. So we'll keep it there. But that'll be a little bit more clear when I run this. So I'm going to click Analyze Taxonomic Names. And when I run in semi-manual, it's not going to auto remap any of my taxas. So don't worry about it changing a bunch of your names if you're just running it semi-manual. So if I just run it like this, you'll see what it does is it finds the taxonomic name that is unmatched, and then it checks in my resource that I provided, the Catalog of Life in this case, and then it said, I didn't find that. So let's look into the thesaurus. So in the thesaurus that's in the portal, and look for any scientific names that might be close. So did you perhaps mean this? Did you perhaps mean this? And here we have a case of a hybrid. So you can see here's an example of where the hybrid problem is difficult to solve. But here it says, okay, I found this species, but I didn't find this variety. Did you mean this variety? And so on and so forth. So if you found a scientific name that was an actual match, so for example, you had a misspelling here, then you could say, it's actually supposed to be this. You click remap to this taxon. And what that would do is change all the specimens associated with this taxon name to whatever the taxon name that you clicked remap to. And if you see something that is really, really crazy, or if you wanted to actually change the value that's in this taxonomic name field, you can also click this pencil to the right, open up the specimen here, and you can change it here. Or if you needed more information and you had an image, you could look at the image and get more information that way. So that can be useful. If you come across issues of like capitalization, sometimes that throws off the taxonomic cleaning tool, and in this case, you see that it didn't even find the genus Asclepius, even though that's definitely in the portal somewhere. So you can also try a manual search. So if I'm going to look for Asclepius, I'll look for Amberosa. I don't think it exists in here. No, but if I did find it, then I could say, okay, it should be this one. And then I'm going to click remap. And then it would remap whatever this is to the scientific name that I added. And I was going to run this. I had some examples before, but I think someone did cleaning in the meantime, in the couple of hours that it later. So actually, let me go and create a problem. Just so that I have something to show you all. Okay, so say that someone said Amaranthus alba It's very common to have a Latin problem like that. And then if I go back into my data cleaning tools and I analyze scientific names, probably going to be in the first 10. So there we can see the scientific name that I added erroneously, Amaranthus alba. And then you have to let it wait till it loads all of them, and then these links will come live. And so, okay, I know that Amaranthus alba should be Amaranthus albus. So
it's interesting it didn't get a close match for you there.
That is weird. Usually it
Yeah.
will show me at least all the amaranthuses.
Hmm.
Maybe there are just
Strange.
too many that it was like, I can't even bother.
No, something strange.
So then I can click Amaranthus albus, remap, and it will say, yep, remapped successfully. And now if I click this, it will give me no results because it has renamed it Amaranthus albus. So if I did a search by Amaranthus albus now, I would find that specimen.
And if you click on the admin tab for that specimen, it would have showed you the change that was made. However, you could also go into review edits. See right there, so it shows the change that was made. And in review edits, even if you're a snapshot, you could still use this tool, go to review edits, download a report, and then give it to your data entry folks and they can make the change in their home database.
Yeah, that's a really great point, is that all the changes that you make in this taxonomic cleaning tool, any of the remapping that you do, that's going to be captured in the review, verify, edits tool. So if we go to my profile, occurrence management, back to my collection, and then I go to review, verify, occurrence edits. It might take a while, but here we go. So this gives me a list of all the edits that have been made in my collection using the front-end interface. And so you can see where I changed this name to be the wrong name, but then you can also see the other things that were made automatically by the taxonomic cleaning tool. So it changed the family, it changed the scientific name authorship, it changed the locality security because this is not a protected taxon. And we won't go into any big details about locality security in this webinar, but probably in a future one. And then it changed the scientific name to Amaranthus albus. So that's really useful. You could download these all. If I go to additional options or actions, you can download all the records or just the selected edits. And as Ed was saying, you could give those to someone else if they need to do those edits in your own home database. All right, so the taxonomic cleaning tool may not be able to fix everything. You don't necessarily need to expect to have zeros in the number of specimens with unmatched taxonomic names. And that's again because the taxonomic thesaurus doesn't really deal with hybrids or cultivars very well. And some taxonomic names just might not be in the thesaurus. So what you didn't see in running this taxonomic cleaning tool is that when the tool goes to Catalog of Life to look for the name, if it finds the name, it will actually import all that data into the taxonomic thesaurus. And so it's a really neat way of auto importing lots of scientific names. So for example, we have a researcher who was working on some specimens of a genus Justicia in this CCH2 portal. And these were only from someplace in Latin America, and there hadn't been very many specimens in the whole portal before then. So these Justicias were not in the taxonomic thesaurus. But when she entered all the data for the specimens, She could then go and run the taxonomic cleaning tool, and all of those new species to the taxonomic thesaurus were automatically added from the catalog of life. So if you're adding a lot of specimens and you find that it's giving you that data entry error where it says this taxon isn't in the taxonomic thesaurus, then you might want to say, oh, okay, later I need to run the taxonomic cleaning tool to make sure that if that name actually exists in catalog of life, I can import all of those names automatically into the taxonomic thesaurus. And it's really nice because it will even find synonyms. So if it is a name that's unaccepted, it will still import it and say, look, I imported this and I made it a synonym of this other thing. All right, so let's talk quickly about the batch editing tool, and then we'll open up for questions. So the batch editing tool is also only possible for administrators of a collection. And just 2 words, use caution when you're doing this, just like when you're using like find and replace in Excel. You can find and replace things that you didn't mean to find and replace. Luckily, all those edits are tracked in the review and verify edits tool as well. So you should be able to revert edits if you make a really big error, but just make sure that you're not editing a lot of specimens at one time erroneously. So if we go into my collection again, and this tool you actually access from edit existing occurrence records. So this is in the data editor control panel. And then you'll find it up here in the top right. It's a little tiny pencil with a plus icon. And it functions pretty much the same way that the Excel find and replace function works. But luckily you can focus it on one field at a time. In fact, I think you can only do one field at a time. So you could say, okay, for any, let's go for collector and say everything that was Lawrence M. Kiefer, someone accidentally put M's instead of L's or something. So then I could say, okay, anything that says Lawrence M. Kiefer, change it to Lawrence L. Kiefer. And you can say match the whole field. So only fields that contain only Lawrence M. Kiefer, I want to change to Lawrence L. Or you could match any part of the field. So if this collector said Lawrence L. Kiefer, comma, somebody else, it would still change the Lawrence L. Kiefer part of the string. And it won't just replace the whole thing with this. If you click match whole field, then it will find just that and replace it completely with just that, the new value. So if I click batch update field, it's going to tell me how many records I'm going to be editing, which is really nice double check, because then you can say, I didn't mean to do 50,000 records. Hold on, what could be going wrong with this? So you can cancel, adjust your search as necessary. So super useful tool for editing those things that, like, oh my goodness, that one student or volunteer, or maybe it was me, kept on entering that thing just a little bit wrong. You can batch edit it and fix that. And again, those edits are going to be in the review verify occurrence edits table. So you can look at those batch edits afterward and look at the old value in the field and the new value in the field and see if it makes sense. Okay, any questions about these tools? I see one person says, what name sources are linked? IPNI, Plants of the World Online, Index Fungorum, AlgaeBase. So it depends on the portal. The ones that I know of that are linked as Catalog of Life, Tropicos has been used in the past. However, they no longer, or maybe they never did, import synonymy. So it wasn't actually, it was just importing everything as accepted, and that was causing a little bit of a headache on the back end because it actually wasn't linking taxa. So I think that's off in most portals. And then I know in Vertibase, they have worms, which is the world. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's for invertebrates. And then I don't know, Ed, do you know what other taxonomic resources we have? We haven't built one for the Plants of the World Online, although I think they have an API and we should be able to do that in the future.
That's something we're going to look into. The other one that we're going to build in is there is a bryophyte resource that's as closely associated with Missouri Botanical Gardens. And it does have an API and it's well supported. So we're going to integrate that into it. And then there's Index Fungorum. That API isn't working well, but there's another resource that we're working to integrate in that's that Andy Miller and his team are maintaining.
Thanks, Nico. World Register of Marine Species, that's worms. And then Andy's talking about FDEX, which is the fungal resource. A question in the chat: if your taxon is not accepted by the Portal Thesaurus, but you enter the binomial, and in this scenario, the genus does exist, can you discover that specimen when searching for specimens of that genus or family? I seem to recall, no, it is not discoverable. Same scenario, but this time you add the family to your unaccepted taxon, and the family is accepted by the thesaurus. Can you discover the specimen when searched under family or under genus? Correct, Tiana. Ed, do you have? Okay. You cannot search for that. You can't find that specimen if you search by genus, if that taxonomic name is not in the thesaurus, because it does not see a hierarchical relationship between that species and that genus.
I think you might be able to search get a match by genus, but you can't get a match by family unless you enter in the family into that form. You definitely can't get a match by higher taxa because it's not indexed to the thesaurus. But I think genus will do it. I could be wrong there though.
I feel like I have searched by genus before, but
it didn't work.
I could be wrong too.
It gets complicated as far as when you're doing these searches on non-indexed names. It gets complicated in the aspect of it can slow your search down dramatically and give problems to the database. So having it indexed, it removes that issue.
Yeah, so if you have taxonomic names that you want added to the taxonomic thesaurus and they're not coming through in Catalog of Life or whatever other taxonomic resource there is, feel free to email your portal manager or the Symbiota Support Hub, and we can add taxonomic names too. Any other questions about these tools?
We're also going to be soon adding another field where there will be a verbatim field for the scientific name, and you could enter in whatever you want. And then there's another field that's the indexable field. So you could enter some scientific name that maybe hasn't been published or is on the specimen and is not available within the global taxonomic thesauri. And you could still index it to the genus. And then that would allow it to be totally searchable by the higher taxonomy, but still display that verbatim name that you want to do.
I guess the one thing I would say at that point is we should probably all use better the notes columns and things like that to explain what we're doing and why we're doing it. One that I've run into is that very often, if you look at some of these recent treatments, they'll look at the species level and ignore things that have been described at the varietal level. So though you could put a published name in for the species, what do you do with the varieties? Say, oh, they vanished. Or do you say, this is what it ought to be called, but the name hasn't been published yet, and leave it at that? I tend to do the latter, but I think it's in, and then you can put down in ed, not meaning in ed, but it would really help if we did that more often. And when I'm doing synonymy now, I'm apt to, if the, for a reason, Ed, I think you told me one time that the reasons are either taxonomic or nomenclature, but I sometimes, I think I put in the notes, if what I'm doing is following POWO, that's where it goes. If it's some other source, put it there. And it's one of those things where, yeah, after 10 years, this will probably become useful, maybe. But
yeah, there are a couple of fields you can use identification remarks or taxon remarks, and that would be a really good place to put that type of information.
well, I was thinking more in terms of the nomenclatural backbone.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
When you make a change at that level rather than, I mean, when it's an ID remark, it says this was an incredibly beautiful example of, or oh, sorry, this had rather longer leaves than most of the species, this sort of thing. Whereas in the backbone, you want to put in, well, this is the reason I put this in a synonymy here, or the reason I haven't put it in synonymy there.
Yeah, that's a good point. So when I'm adding new scientific names, and it sounds like this is what you do as well, in the taxonomic thesaurus, is you put the source of where you're getting that information.
In theory, I do it. Sometimes it's more theoretical than practice.
Yeah, and sometimes I will put in something as accepted, but in the notes, I'll say this is an unpublished name that like is not technically accepted, but it doesn't have any synonyms that we know of. Like the closest synonym would be the genus, and I'm not going to say it's just a synonym of the genus. So you might find things that are accepted in the taxonomic thesaurus that just means like it has no synonyms that we know of right now.
That
Doesn't
person
necessarily
better get
mean-
on, publish the bloody name.
Exactly. Yeah. Mhm.
But that actually brings up something with geography, which isn't too much of a problem with North America. But I work in Somaliland, and it's not recognized by the United Nations. It's not even recognized to the extent that Palestine is. So I just put it in, and what GBIF does is simply say from the latitude and longitude, it's in Somalia. It's just one of the things you have to live with if you're a Somalilander. But, there are a lot of problems not being recognized.
Yeah, that's a good point. Geography is a lot more complicated than we sometimes think it might be.
And then going down it, one of the things that would be useful, I think, is being able to add geographic names, and it's the second level of the third level that, and I haven't been working much for North America recently, but for North America it's pretty solid. But if you go outside of North America, you don't get those little hints and get it spelled correctly.
For sure. And that's one of the changes that we're making, is that I think we're going to give super administrators the ability to create and make new linkages and be able to, put all those states in instead of having to go into the back of the database and enter them into, which
you wouldn't want anybody like me doing.
And each portal is different. So as far as like the geographic thesaurus, if you have a thesaurus that's specific to a certain region, that whoever's controlling that region, that portal, hopefully it's folks from that region can decide what they want to do with a political, but also the thesaurus, the taxonomic thesaurus, that is also different per portal. So some portals will accept names that are not officially published, or morpho names, even if it's shared by the broad community. Other portals are more strict, where it has to be published before it goes into the thesaurus. So you have to contact that thesaurus. SciNet wants it published in generally most of the time before it goes into that thesaurus. And that's another reason, this infraspecific taxa. There's a lot of infraspecific taxonomic names that are in these collections that are not published, but it'd still be worthwhile to, if we had a name where you could index to the species name, but still have that verbatim infra-specific taxa in there, it would still make it searchable by the hierarchy and still allow you to have that verbatim name.
But if the genus has changed,
Well, then you could have it mapped to a different genus.
okay, I mean, if you're going to use an existing published name, it would have the wrong genus on it, according to what you've said the species could do. It's just when you do these wonderful phylogenetic studies and you don't go below the species level. It's my pet peeve, by the way, you might notice this. But you know, it is as if there's nothing below a species, which it's probably there isn't on a budget. But what do you do with the infraspecific taxa that have long been recognized? You don't want them to disappear, but you may want to reflect the updated taxonomies. And so that's been my answer. The should be a name.
Well, and you still
Not
can
published
map them to the infraspecific taxa if they are considered accepted. It's just that if you have an unaccepted variety or an unpublished variety, you could still keep that in the verbatim taxonomic name. So it's
Well,
like, yeah, two
That would
ways.
be one way of doing it. Yeah.
All right, I want to make one more comment about data cleaning, and that is bringing cleaned data into your portal. Let's say you did some data cleaning outside of the portal and then you want to bring it back in. That can get really tricky, so I'm just going to mention this. Have caution, because you need to pay attention to whether you're re-uploading those data as a full text file or as a skeletal file. So it's relatively easy to upload new data into a portal, meaning like occurrences that have never previously existed, or values into fields that never previously had data in those fields. So for example, if you wanted to add georeferences to specimens that were previously not georeferenced, that's pretty easy because you're putting values into things that were previously empty. But if you're trying to just edit a few occurrences in just a few fields, and you try to just take those fields and re-upload those fields into the portal, it's not going to work because the skeletal file doesn't overwrite previous data. It can only put data into previously empty fields. I'm not going to go into much detail about this right here, but I have put a link here to, again, our Symbiota support group page on symbiota.org. And you'll probably want to watch the recording for the January Symbiota support group meeting, because we talked in greater detail about the difference between a full text file upload and a skeletal text file upload. So if there's something that you can't do in one of these data cleaning tools in a Symbiota portal, and you're like, whatever, I'm just going to do this in Excel, just make sure that you have a plan for how you're getting your data back in there before you go and do all that cleaning. And if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to us, because it can be a little bit complicated moving stuff in and out of the portal and making sure you don't lose any of your data. And then let me put that link into the chat real quick. That's where you can find all of the recordings. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, and then we can switch to if anyone has any last minute questions.